really pleased to introduce kind of now on a revenue side, Francis Lobo. And Francis Lobo is the former Chief Revenue Officer at WeWork, but he was also the CEO at a company called United Online. They own internet properties like NetZero, Juno, those kinds of things. Quite interesting. He was also a president at AOL. Great background. Perfect person to talk about how to scale, how to think about revenue. So Francis, thanks a lot for being here.
I'm going to spend a few minutes, guys, just talking about a couple of things that I've learned and I inherently believe in. You will find they work for you, they don't work for you, but I'll share a few stories around why I believe these are really key to building a sustainable, high growth revenue business. Like the picture? I thought it was awesome when I saw it. I've never had such white teeth in my life, ever. Anyways, so I want to start with a simple thing of understanding your customer. Now, I have tremendous admiration for everyone in the room who has the guts to go out there and build your own business. And at some level, it's because you have a value proposition you're going to bring to some audience, some customer, some segment, somebody somewhere. You're going to make their life that much better X amount of the time or forever or whatever that is. That's a fundamental thing. If you look at the absolute best businesses in the world, it takes all of 2 seconds for you to understand how they're making your life a little better. Think about that for a second. And then you look at all the businesses that are declining and you figure out, well, they're not really making anyone's life better in that moment. So how do you constantly keep that top of mind with the million decisions you're going to face over the next X amount of time to always keep your focus on the customer to make sure you're delivering on that USP, that promise that's going to bear everything that you want. So I believe there are 3 elements to that. The first one is product, right? Knowing what exactly you are delivering to whom and how it's making that person, that business, that company's life better, easier, cheaper, whatever is the value proposition you have. Once you know what that is, and you have to keep innovating, that's a given, but once you know what that is, just do your best to make sure you stay true to that. And that's one of the things I learned at WeWork. They do that exceptionally well, and they do not compromise anything ever for any loss in value in the product. So the second thing is, once you know what your product is, I believe at some point you figure out, okay, how do I create a business out of this? How do I justify raising money, and what's that business model, and how is it long-term and sustainable, and how can you make it grow? Cool. Let's assume you get that done. The third one, which is actually the toughest one, like there's no shortage of great ideas, there's no shortage of great companies, guys. The ones that succeed are the ones that execute, the ones that don't are the ones that executed a little bit less than the ones that do. There is absolutely no shortage of them. But it comes back to one thing: product and the customer, and then business model and execution. So this all sounds really easy and this sounds really, really simple. It's obviously very difficult to do. How do you never let go? And I'll share a little process that I believe in that allows me to keep this message and these fundamentals present as much as I can. And it's something I learned a lot also from my time at WeWork, where they're able to do that really, really well. So there's a 6-step process. And it took me a long time to learn the number one most important step of everything, which is people. I genuinely believe everything in this world comes down to people. Every deal you get, every dollar you raise, every customer you get, it's people and putting people front and center. So when it comes to your business, making sure that you are able to hire the absolutely best people, take as much time as you need, because the opportunity cost of getting the wrong people is way too high. You cannot really measure that amount. It's just way too high. So getting the right people on the bus, that's step one. And that's not just about talent. That's also about people you like working with, people you like being around, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them, but with talent, sharing in the same vision and mission that you have. Number two is culture. And I say culture is unbelievably critical. I've been privileged and blessed enough that I worked in different companies. I've worked in a startup. I worked in AOL, which was one side of the spectrum. United Online was somewhere in the middle, and then I worked in WeWork, which was the whole other extreme of the spectrum. what's really key about being your culture and is when you have the right people and you get them together to form a team and they like it and the sum of the parts is more, that's the culture you're going for. And it's very, very difficult as you grow and as you scale and as you go to new countries and new continents and get new people and new hires to maintain that. But try as best as you can to make sure that the culture suits the goal and the moment of what you want to accomplish. The third aspect I believe is absolutely critical, and this comes back to a customer, is data. Learning as much as you can about what the key metrics are, what your businesses are going, who are your customers. I'm right now consulting with a company that's a multi-billion-dollar company. They don't know who their customers are. If you don't know who your customers are, where they're shopping, when they're shopping, what is their process, how long do you take, what are their decision makers, how often do they need your product, how can you put yourself in front of them with the right story and the right message for them to buy. So getting as much data as you can is could not be more important. Now, people, culture, data, sounds simple, strategy. If you know what your product is, if you're on your way to building that team, if you have all of the information, a plan of attack is really, really, really critical. And I'll share a small little, very brief story with you on why this is so important. I advised a startup, and about 8 months ago, they were at a step, they had just raised some money, and they wanted to do like 15 different things. And we did a day-long brainstorm session, and the conclusion was what they were building, their core product, their core USP, their core offering to their main customers who they hadn't yet solved for, was now going to be one of 4 or 5. And their first investors came in and gave them money based on that core product. And it seemed very obvious to everyone in the room 5 hours into a lot of discussions and pros and cons that going to product number 2 and number 3 and number 4, which they thought the sum of the parts would be better, was a huge mistake because number 1 wasn't at a place. Google didn't do Google Maps till search was right. Facebook didn't buy WhatsApp and Instagram till Facebook took off. And they made a big decision that day to not do product 2, 3, 4, and they had a detailed plan around product 1. Long story short, the end of the year with $8 million in revenue, and they'll do about 600% growth this year and close in about 50 to 60 million in revenue on the one product. So understanding and figuring out that strategy, which you get from data, which you get from that amazing team you're building, super critical. Then what I think is the actual toughest thing to do, and while I speak, because I know I'm actually fairly often a little bit boring, I'm going to run a video as well, but keep in mind execution and innovation, right? So I'm going to run this video and it'll play in the background. I'm sure many of you have seen this video before, and I'll talk to the video for a few seconds at the end. But why is execution so key? Has anyone seen this before? So this is a Formula One pit stop in 1950 something. Okay? I love that guy hitting the wheel over there. But anyways, think about execution, right? So you have your strategy. How do you execute? How do you not pivot all the time and get confused and go for conferences and go for another conference, another one, and you get confused? Execution is difficult, guys. So building something that works for yourself on the execution front, where you know what you want to accomplish this year, this quarter, this month, this week. Every Sunday night, I figure out what I want to accomplish the next week. I write it down on a piece of paper. I ask myself on Friday evening, did I accomplish it? It's one step in a ladder of 10 steps. Am I making progress? That is really, really key. By the way, pretty cool, right? Anyways, they keep going. Last step after execution is continuous innovation. I don't need to tell you guys what that is, but always keeping your nose out in front of everybody else and being as good as you can be is super critical. Okay, they finished that pit stop. 1950 something. Can you pause the video for a sec? Is it possible? Awesome, thanks. Now, you guys saw the pit stop. Now think about it. Everyone performed a different task. You have a CFO, you have a GC, you have outside counsel, inside counsel, you have an analyst. Everyone has a different task, right? Okay, people, you're building the right team. You get the right culture. You're all working together, the same mission, so on. No one's taking a coffee break in the middle of the board meeting. Everyone's there and so on and so forth. You have all your data. You know how long it takes to do everything, what pieces come in where and when, right? You have a strategy. Who's going to do what, which, when, where. You're used to execution. You continuously innovate. So Ferrari did that with something as simple as a pit stop. And that video you just saw was the same exact team as what I'm going to show you now. Different people, different tasks coming together to a collective mission to deliver on their promise to the customer. In this case, it's the driver, right? Okay, if you are able to hire the right team, keep them motivated, get the right culture, make sure your data, remind yourself of that as much as you can, get the strategy, execute, this is where you end up for your pit stop. I just love that sound. Okay, what's different? Right? But you know what, guys? In all seriousness, you're going to have only so many dollars in the bank. You're going to have only so much time. You're going to have a lot of other competitors right behind you, in front of you, at the side of you, trying to push you off the road. You're going to have all that going. But if you can stay focused on the goal, if you can stay true to what you want to deliver, I think this driver is much happier than that guy. And you can get the right people. Do you know that the guys who put the wheels on these tires train for that for years? And there's like 50 people who are training for those 3 spots or 4 spots, 4 tires, I guess. And it's like 1/100th of a second can get you on the team or off the team. And they perform a role that together functions that way. I guess the message is obvious, right? So to come back to business, at WeWork, when I joined there, the goal when I became Chief Revenue Officer was to build a machine to fill WeWorks and sell and make sure customers were happy and deliver on lifetime value of all of them. And I figured out what was the team we needed to build, the type head of sales, the head of broker relationships, the head of enterprise, the head of data, the head of the call centers, user acquisition, lead generation, got the right people, built the right culture. We became like a family. We had goals. We had every piece of data we needed, and we executed. And I know I left a few months ago, but in the 18 months we did that, I can't share exact numbers, obviously, but let's just say that the growth that they had once that team was going, and they're going at that same pace now, was like way north of 600-700% per year growth. So that's my message. I hope it's helpful. Thank you, guys.